Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, power outage for 1 million. Over 10,000 U.S. flights scheduled for today canceled. Multiple states are seeing snow, ice, and cold as record-breaking winter weather creates chaos in parts of the U.S. Authorities are asking people to avoid unnecessary travel. In dueling press conferences, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz denounces yesterday's ICE shooting, while the head of Border Patrol says the rhetoric against ICE needs to stop. What's next for Iran? The country continues a bloody clampdown against protesters as U.S. military assets draw near. A Middle East expert joins us to unpack what's next. Bombshell news from China's defense ministry. 2 top Chinese military officials are under investigation. What we know so far and what it means for China's military readiness. And American rock climber Alex Honnold, known for free solo, has now set up a new record, but this time in a dense urban area of Taipei.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Places in the U.S. face up to a foot or more of snow today. A massive winter storm is spreading across the United States, bringing freezing temperatures, icy conditions, and widespread risks of power outages to millions. Here's more.
Forecasters said snow, sleet, freezing rain, and dangerously frigid temperatures would sweep the eastern 2/3 of the nation on Sunday and into the week, disrupting travel and government operations. President Trump has called the storms historic. On Saturday, he approved federal emergency disaster declarations in multiple states. PowerOutage.us reported almost 1 million customers in the U.S. were without electricity. Almost the entire Northeast is under a winter weather advisory, along with some eastern and Midwestern states. New York Governor Kathy Hochul warned residents to stay indoors and off the roads. She said some parts of the state were seeing record low temperatures.
This is certainly the coldest weather we've seen, the coldest winter storm we've seen in years. And truly, New York State is locked into a grip here. An Arctic siege has taken over our state and many other states across the nation. And the snowstorm we've been expecting is now underway, but it is brutal, it is bone-chilling, and it is dangerous.
Ice storm warnings are in place for some southern states, including parts of Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, and Kentucky. The majority of Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Mississippi, along with portions of Alabama and Minnesota, are under extreme cold warnings.
As long as this doesn't last for 4 or 5 days, I don't think it's really going to be an issue. Other than if the rain freezes, snapping power lines and stuff like that, which is a lot worse than the last time the grid went down, because that's harder to repair than just taking stress off.
Flight tracking website FlightAware reports more than 11,000 U.S. flights scheduled for Sunday were canceled. Over 4,000 flights were canceled on Saturday. And so far, 2,400 flights for Monday have also been canceled. Washington, D.C.'s Ronald Reagan National Airport said airlines canceled all flights at the airport Sunday. At the Capitol, some families were enjoying the storm and using it as an opportunity to have some fun.
We just live nearby. We wanted to give the kids a chance to play in the snow, and we had been hearing all week about snowpocalypse. Everyone was worried about it, but honestly, we're pretty excited.
The National Weather Service's latest forecast for Sunday through Monday morning calls for heavy snow from the Ohio Valley to the Northeast, including up to 18 inches in New England. Much of the Southeast and parts of the Mid-Atlantic are expected to get rain and freezing rain. Forecasters predicted bitterly cold temperatures and dangerously cold wind chills from the southern plains to the northeast in the wake of the storm, bringing prolonged hazardous travel and infrastructure impacts.
Iran's supreme leader is reportedly hiding in a fortified underground shelter. The Jerusalem Post says the Islamic leader's hideout contains a series of tunnels below Tehran. The The Post cites an Iranian opposition outlet saying the Ayatollah's third son has taken over management of the supreme leader's day-to-day responsibilities. The son is now serving as the primary channel for communication with the regime's executive branches. This comes after President Trump said that American ships were en route to waters near the country. And joining us now is David Wormser, Middle East Affairs Analyst at the Center for Security Policy and former Senior Advisor to U.S. Vice President Cheney on the Middle East and Strategic Affairs. David, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to see you. Now, the U.S. has moved military assets into the region after President Trump told reporters Thursday, quote, "We have a big force going toward Iran," adding while he'd rather not see anything happen, we're watching them very closely. Now, this comes as Iran has warned any attack will be seen as all-out war. How are you reading these moves and what we can expect to see here?
Well, clearly the president is moving enough assets into place that he has all the options on the table. If we're going to do a strike on Iran, he's within a day at the outermost. We will have the assets in place to do so. Certainly the Israelis are working with the United States to complete the intelligence picture and make sure that all the targets and targeted leadership that may be on the table is identified. Their locations are nailed down and so forth. So there's a lot of preparatory work that's happening, but is about to be completed. So then we get into the period in which the president either decides to actually strike or tries to lean on the Iranians enough, making it clear to them that we have everything we need to do a strike to hopefully make them buckle. And buckling in this case would mean some sort of a fundamental change in the constitution of the regime.
And despite the internet blackout, the scale of the protests in Iran and the bloody clampdown is slowly coming into focus. How are you reading these protests? Is there lasting momentum in spite of the brutal clampdown?
Well, there's a number of lasting elements, as you said. One is the lasting momentum. Not all the protests are over. There are still cities and towns in Iran where there's opposition and there's still activity by the opposition. There's also preparation for the future and waiting for what's about to come, if it's an American strike, an Israeli strike, or both. But there's also a long-term hatred of the regime now that has set in among the Iranian people. Before it was a divorce. They had given up on the regime. They want to change. Now there's real hatred of the regime because of what they've done. You mentioned the suppression. What is coming out now, it seems on the night of the 8th and 9th, between the 8th and 9th of January, the regime killed as many as 30,000 people in that one 24-hour period, which would be one of the most horrific slaughters of humans anywhere, within a short period of time by any regime in the last century. So it really is a horrific regime that has killed. We don't know how many people. We don't know the parameters even of how many people, but it does seem now well north of 40 to 50,000 people have been killed by the regime over the last week and a half.
And on that note, we do know that earlier in the protests, Iran used military jammers, reportedly from Russia or China, to shut down Starlink access. Could there be cooperation between the Chinese regime and the Iranian regime?
Yes, the Chinese regime and the Russian regime both helped not only to jam Starlink, but to try to follow the leads to the Starlink sites inside Iran so that they could track down the leadership of the opposition, arrest them, and kill them. So we do know that there's extensive assistance by the Chinese and the Russians, especially the Chinese, to Iran. We have seen, I believe, 26 transports from China in the last 72 hours land in Iran. That's a lot of military transport from China in a very short period of time. We know that they've also sent anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, not true anti-missile systems, but anti-aircraft systems to Iran. So there's a lot of military cooperation by China against the United States and Israel in a potential conflict here with Iran.
And what is Beijing's interest in the region? Why are they helping so much?
Well, I think there's a number of interests. First and foremost is they simply want the United States to stumble. So anything they can do to make the United States stumble is good. But I think there's a more serious issue here. Iran has been one of the most repressive regimes for the last 50 years. It's really a symbol of that camp of repressive regimes that include countries like Cuba, North Korea, China, and what was Syria and so forth. It is one of the main countries in that camp. If it goes down to a freedom revolution, it will send ripples and shockwaves to Beijing. We remember how the collapse of the Soviet Union led to Tiananmen Square. We could easily see this fervor, this feeling of a freedom type aspirations by people suddenly show up in various of these terribly repressive regimes, whether it's Cuba or even China. So obviously China doesn't want to deal with that. They do not want to see the voice of freedom be a successful voice.
Now, we saw in the first Trump administration the Abraham Accords. Now, this time around, President Trump has established the Board of Peace. What's your take on that and what role it could play in the Middle East?
Well, the Board of Peace is a very complex body that he's setting up. I'm not sure it'll really succeed, but its real purpose, in my view, is first and foremost to supplant and to erode the UN structure, which has obviously failed and is dominated by forces that are inherently anti-American, anti-Western. So I think he's right to try to create an alternative structure, whether it succeeds or not, that at the very least unravels the dominance and dangerous game that the UN has been playing over the last decades. So I think that's good. By the way, the UN is also another issue of China and why China's very nervous about some of these developments. It has effectively managed to take over a lot of these NGO structures like the World Health Organization and so forth through debt to some countries that then feel indebted and diplomatically support their efforts and so forth. So this Board of Peace, I think, is very important in terms of undermining that international structure that has arisen over the last decades that's inimical to the West. But it may not work in itself, but that's not its primary purpose. Its primary purpose is first and foremost to push the UN off to the side.
And David, when we look to the future of Iran, talk to us about the different factions and interests within the country. What would an Iran not under the current regime look like?
Well, the big question is, first of all, the Shah himself, the son of the last Shah of Iran, who was exiled and died in exile. His son is technically the Shah. There's a lot of debate over whether he's a real leader or not. One thing we do know is that a number of the opposition forces that had claimed to have such operational capacity in the country showed that they really didn't lately, whereas the Shah is what the Iranian people have been calling for. Javed Shah is the slogan used in this revolt, and that means long live the Shah, long live the king. So he clearly has currency, but he himself, from what I understand from him, as well as those around him, he really doesn't want to be the operational leader of Iran. He wants to be the symbol of Iranian unity and the force around which the nation gathers. But he himself does not want to get down into the nitty-gritty of running the country afterwards. He wants to be what is more genuinely a constitutional monarch. So that really leads to the question that you're getting at, is who then leads Iran for real if he's just the symbol. And that really is, I believe, the leadership of the Iranians in Iran right now. There clearly is a leadership behind this revolt, this uprising. They clearly have been baptized by fire. And I think we don't know who they are. They're not visible to us on the outside, but they're clearly there. And I believe that you're going to see them rise and identify as the regime goes down.
And zooming out a bit, what are you watching for in terms of how this could play out? Because looking at history, for example, there was the Arab Spring that swept across the Middle East. Some areas did, get a little better. life, got better, but some other areas became hotspots for terrorism or terrorist strongholds. What are you watching for in terms of how this plays out, especially maybe in other countries like Cuba or even China?
Right. Well, the Arab Spring led to an Islamist winter, and that's what we're seeing in various countries, and that's one of the problems of it. Now, Iran, you have an Islamist regime. In fact, it's an Islamist regime that has strong communist overlay. It was a coalition between the communists and the Islamists in 1979 that came to power. So when the Iranians reject the regime, they're rejecting both the Islamism as well as the communism that led to it. Those of us who deal with the Iranian communities, both those who were exiled and those who have come out of Iran since 1979, no, this is an incredibly sophisticated leadership or a society, refined society, a very European-like society, modern, more like Europe or Japan or so forth, and their capabilities and their skill sets and so forth, and their political outlook. So I'm pretty bullish on what Iran will look like afterwards. They have a lot of problems that this regime is bequeathing to the future generations. But they're a fairly industrious crowd, and I think they'll be very pro-American and quite willing to align with countries like India and Israel and that alliance in the region. So I'm pretty optimistic for the people there.
Well, David Wormser, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The head of U.S. Border Patrol gave an update on the immigration enforcement situation in Minnesota after ICE agents shot and killed a man yesterday.
The man was identified as intensive care nurse Alex Preddy. The shooting triggered legal filings on Saturday night from state and local officials as well as others. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz described Preddy's life at Sunday's press conference.
Someone who went to work to care for veterans, someone who was a valued coworker, someone who relished and lived in this state in a big way, whether it was outdoor activities or being down there on the street as a First Amendment witness to what ICE is doing to this state.
Walz is putting the blame on President Trump for having agents enforcing immigration law in the state and says the agents are not trained.
So my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state?
Authorities are still gathering details on the circumstances of the shooting. U.S. Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino spoke at around the same time in a federal office building about 20 miles away. He emphasized the responsibility of government, community, and media in helping to avoid these kinds of tragedies.
When politicians, community leaders, and some journalists engage in that heated rhetoric we keep talking about, when they make the choice to vilify law enforcement, calling law enforcement names like Gestapo, or using the term kidnapping, that is a choice that is made. There are actions and consequences that come from those choices. And then when someone chooses to listen to a politician, a so-called journalist, a community leader that spouted that type of vilification towards law enforcement or anything else, when you choose to listen to that, that is a choice, and there are consequences and actions there also. I think we saw that yesterday.
Preddy stepped in when agents were attempting to restrain protesters at one of the many protest actions against ICE in the state. Agents discovered Preddy armed with a handgun during his confrontation with officers, but there are conflicting reports on whether it was drawn and whether he attempted to use it on officers. A full court hearing is set for Monday.
President Trump has just posted on Truth Social calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey to formally cooperate with the administration to enforce the nation's laws. He also called on Congress to immediately pass legislation to end sanctuary cities, which he says is the root cause of all the problems. Coming up, bombshell news from China's defense ministry. 2 top Chinese military officials are under investigation. What we know so far and what it means for China's military readiness. That's coming up.
A performance that truly matters for each and every one of us. This is what you've been waiting for. See it at least once in your lifetime. Shen Yun. Get tickets now at shenyun.com. Whispered across generations, a hidden secret unveils the essence of longevity and vitality, a timeless legend regarding energy and wonder. Rooted in ancient health wisdom, we proudly introduce Pure Tang Black Ginseng, a 100% natural organic energy drink made from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng. It takes 2,260 days and nights from seed to growth, undergoing a meticulous 9-step process of steaming and drying. Black ginseng reaches its full potency, enriched with ginsenoside RG3 and enhanced absorption efficiency. No sugar, no caffeine, no artificial ingredients. Experience the pure natural power of Pure Tang Black Ginseng. Nourish your body, strengthen your immunity, and boost your energy. To order Pure Tang Black Ginseng, please visit puretang.com.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Many of my clients ask me, how can I afford to buy my next home, but also make sure my current home sells? That's why who you work with matters. With HomeLight, we're able to help clients buy and sell at the same time with all of the certainty and none of the stress. It's the most game-changing solution in real estate today. Together with HomeLight, we've helped clients win the home of their dreams every time.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer is delaying a controversial bill on the Chagos Islands after backlash at home and sharp criticism from President Donald Trump. The British territory in the Indian Ocean hosts a key US-UK military base. Here's more.
Britain's government has pulled a planned parliamentary debate on a bill yesterday that would formalize its agreement to cede sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. The deal would keep the strategic Diego Garcia military base in US and British hands. But the UK would lease the site from Mauritius for about $135 million a year for 99 years. But the move has sparked political backlash at home and abroad. In a Truth Social post last week, Trump blasted Britain's plan to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. He added that the move would signal total weakness to China and Russia. Lawmakers paused for citing geopolitical tensions and concerns the deal would undermine security arrangements with the U.S. The government says it remains committed to the agreement, calling the Diego Garcia base vital to national security and regional stability. Trump's comments have added to the pressure, rattling the British government and fueling debate over whether the handover should be reconsidered. For now, the bill is on hold and will come back up in Parliament later, leaving the future of the Chagos deal and its geopolitical fallout uncertain.
After Britain paused the Chagos Islands bill, Trump praised the US-UK military alliance on Truth Social, calling it a bond too strong to ever be broken. He highlighted the bravery of British troops alongside American forces, saying their partnership is unmatched. The message underscores the deep military ties that persist despite political disagreements. In China, regime authorities have announced an investigation into two of the country's most senior military officials. That's according to a statement today from China's Defense Ministry. The statement said the two officials are, quote, suspected of serious violations of discipline and law, and that authorities have decided to file a case for review and investigations into both of them. The Defense Ministry did not provide further details about the nature of the alleged violations. Coming up, Beijing purging two top military leaders. What does all this mean for a Taiwan contingency? And how should the U.S. evaluate and handle relations with China? Steve Yates joins us to unpack what's next after the break.
So at the age of 5, I was sexually molested. I had my first child at the age of 15 and became homeless at the age of 16. The scariest part about not having a place to live was having a child and not having a place to live and not knowing where our meal was going to come from and where we're going to sleep. To be homeless as a teen, I didn't ask for that.
No young person should ever have to worry about having a safe place to sleep at night, or a warm meal to eat, or whether anyone cares about them. 1 in 10 young adults will experience a form of homelessness this year, and that's unacceptable. But the good news is there is an organization making a big difference, Covenant House.
Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night.
For over 50 years, Covenant House has been helping youth in crisis.
It was pretty tough. But Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today.
Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
I have no words to express how Covenant House changed my life. They gave me the love that I needed. They just really genuinely just wanted to help me succeed, and I'm succeeding.
Your $19 monthly gift is urgently needed to reach other young people who are facing unimaginable situations. Call or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Your support makes the work of Covenant House possible. Thank you for caring.
Hey, boss. Okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
You sure?
I said I'm fine.
Since I was little, it was only like me and my parents.
You think you created family out of characters?
Yeah, of course.
I'm gonna take that, make it into a song.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it. In my head, in my head, in my head. Where you at, where you at, on the way out. In my head, in my head, in my head.
Hey, son.
Hey, Pop.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Beijing has purged two top military leaders, the latest in a series of investigations. It's leading analysts to question the stability of the party. But what does all this mean for a Taiwan contingency, and how should the U.S. evaluate and handle relations with China? Joining us now to unpack what all of this means is Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow for China and National Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Steve, as always, thank you so much for joining us. Now, diving straight in, how are you reading these latest investigations into two of the country's most senior military figures? What does that tell you about the state of the party?
Well, I have a number of friends who've served for many, many years watching this very, very closely, and all of them say that this is unprecedented. At the same time, it really doesn't change a lot of the choices the U.S. government has to make about what they're going to have to respond to or necessarily tell us what China will do. Ultimately, we look at China being run by Xi Jinping. And this purge of the military under normal circumstances would be dramatic. You'd think it would take a contingency in the Taiwan Straits off the table, but you just can't take anything off the table with Xi Jinping. So unfortunately, it gives us a lot to watch, a lot to try to analyze and unpack. And I would bet that the NTD audience has as good information as anybody about this. But unfortunately, we still have a powerful government that could be irresponsible at any time. And they have these trials and tribulations in the military leadership that are going to continue. I mean, as you noted in the intro, this is not the first. They were barely left with anybody at the top of the Central Military Commission at this point. So we have to see where they go politically.
I want to dig into that Taiwan aspect because these two were the last generals with real war experience. What could that mean in terms of a Taiwan contingency?
Well, you could read it different ways. So I'll just play the scenario out a little bit. One could read it as they might think, looking at what the United States has done with its armada vis-a-vis Venezuela, looking at what the U.S. was able to do with Iran and hitting sensitive facilities before Chinese tech was able to detect the entry or exit of American forces at that time. These generals could have said, well, we have a lot of investment and a lot of manufacturing deployed, but we don't have a lot of kinetic experience and certainly not up against the likes of the United States. So they could have been urging caution or more time when Xi wants to go sooner. At the same time, there are lots of things that could be explaining what's going on with this. The military has been wedded into webs that could be called corrupt at any time. That's the nature of the institution and the way it's financed itself over recent decades. And there could just be political intrigue that goes into why someone's time is up and the mafia boss has decided it's your time to go through a trial or exile or worse.
Now, to your point, if Xi Jinping is surrounded by those he sees as loyalists or who are not going to raise caution for a Taiwan plan, could that actually move up that potential Taiwan invasion?
Well, I'm one that doesn't really believe there will be a Taiwan invasion in the near term. And part of that is perhaps my hope, maybe I'm wrong about this, but a hope that some measure of real leadership there would recognize that it is militarily very, very difficult. Technologically, that has only gotten more difficult. And if they look at where Russia went, are they that much better in terms of their surety of where their military machine would go in that kind of a contingency? And we have Japan and other powers making clear that this is not something that they would consider incidental or irrelevant to their national interests. So I think those scenarios have gotten more complicated in the last year or two. And so I hope that there's rationality that says that this isn't going to go sooner, but you can never say never. And that's why I think we will always have these questions. We'll always do our best to try to answer them, but we just don't get to know. That's where former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld was right. We have to be careful what we know and what the things are that we just can't know. And that's life and that's military planning.
And given these latest purges, some analysts are wondering about the stability of the party apparatus inside Beijing, because this also follows recent CIA recruitment videos in Chinese, seeking those in the country to come forward with information. In your view, how stable is the party right now? Or is there a sense of distrust maybe among the party elite?
Yeah, I don't think that the party is that stable. Unfortunately, though, I also have a dim view that unstable and ineffective parties in these authoritarian regimes can linger way too long. The searing experience of my lifetime was the North Korean regime in the 1990s, pronounced dead by nearly every intelligence service and diplomatic service in the world, and it's still very much around today. And so I think we have to be cautious about how close it is. And we've had a recent experience with Iran, where there's widespread demonstrations and the regime looks to be on the ropes. It could still be on the ropes. In fact, I hope it is, because it's a terrible regime that I hope ends for the sake of the Iranian people. We have a similar situation with China, where if the economy is shrinking, they're an export-dependent economy, and if they're playing dangerous games with the United States, playing political games with countries like Canada, and their economic drivers for low energy, like Iran and Venezuela, are getting affected. And if Russia is not a driving engine of growth or opportunity, where do they turn to have confidence? So I think that their options have actually gotten worse. But unfortunately, when you have bloody regimes, They don't have to have only good options before they're willing to take risks. And that is just where we are.
In terms of the party leadership that is left, could we see some of them trying to preserve their own status and power and perhaps revolt against Xi Jinping? What's the likelihood of something like that?
Yeah, I would just put the likelihood as lower just because Xi has spent his entire time in government killing, trying, purging people who might be in a position to do that. And at this point, they have the world's most advanced surveillance state, and they probably surveil each other more than they surveil anybody else. And so that's where I would think that the odds are a little bit difficult. At the same time, I'm just someone who believes that in the evolution of mankind, we get to these points where these regimes get brittle, they make mistakes, and the people have had enough. I wish I had a better crystal ball to tell me when we are close or at those kind of a tipping points. And I think that the people of China certainly deserve better, and they would have much, much better options under a more humane and accountable government. But I just don't see Xi Jinping going easily or willingly. And so I think that we are in for probably political struggle and more purges like this in institutions beyond just the military.
And to your earlier point, with all that's happening inside China, how should the U.S. be evaluating and handling all of this? For instance, are there lessons from the fall of the Soviet Union that could potentially be applied here?
Well, there are some lessons, but I think that we're in just such a different place in the world. I think at this point, unambiguously, the United States is a very, very strong economy. It is getting to be stronger militarily. Its alliances, despite some of the political show and tell going on around the world, are actually pretty capable and strong when they matter to China. And so I think that the main thing that the United States really ought to be doing is if they have this much unreliable lack of transparency, unaccountability in the military, and then we really need to make sure that our supply chains are insulated, if not completely decoupled from this kind of a risky regime. I think the U.S. administration and some around the world have not moved as fast as they might. I know it can't be a one day and done quick on and off switch, but especially Europe, Canada, and some others, they've been toying with the idea of deepening strategic partnership. This should be a signal that says absolutely not the time to do that with this kind of regime, because if there is a change, my bet is the people of China will remember those that tried to give a lifeline to a dying tyrannical regime.
And on that last point, we've seen some reversals, if you will, with Canada's Mark Carney now walking back some of those trade deals after President Trump threatened 100% tariffs on Canada. And of course, we saw with the UK as well, the Chagos Islands was in the headlines a lot after that deal was approved last year. But then Trump this last week criticized it a lot, and now it's being walked back as well. How are you reading that? Because some were saying that China's driving a wedge between the U.S. and allies. But is that really true?
I think China is trying to, and sometimes our allies, because of domestic politics, in my assessment, not everyone agrees with me, but in my assessment, they're blindly critical of President Trump. So if he cured cancer, they'd still blame him for something. And so I think that visceral dislike for the style of President Trump has led them to consider options that in normal circumstances would be an obvious no. And so I think that we need our allies to sort of sober up. Some of the people in their own systems are saying as much in Europe and in Canada. And as you report, we are seeing some of these sobriety checkpoints coming back to maybe not so fast. But it shouldn't be this hard a work to convince the UK not to give sovereignty to strategically located territory to the People's Republic of China or one of their useful allies. That shouldn't need to be a debate among Five Eyes countries.
Well, Steve Yates, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Brits in southern England are protesting against uncontrolled immigration. Protesters gathered to rally against the government's decision to house asylum seekers in former army barracks.
People can't ignore that we are just normal people from normal backgrounds that have come together under the banner of our flag because we've had enough of what's going on.
The site once served as a military facility. It began housing immigrants on Thursday as part of the government's effort to reduce the cost of expanding immigration. Protesters waved Union Jack and England flags. They voiced their dissatisfaction with the government, with some chanting, "We want Labour out," referring to the ruling party. Coming up, American rock climber Alex Honnold, known for free solo, has now set a new record, but this time in a dense urban area of Taipei. And discoveries from ancient civilizations that challenge what we think we know about the past, from advanced metallurgy to mysterious artifacts, one author argues some ancient knowledge may have been lost over time. Coming up.
Restaurant quality pho with no wait. In just 4 minutes, you get bold, authentic Vietnamese flavor with Pholicious. Available in beef or chicken. Crafted from real beef tallow or chicken, it's comforting and full of tradition. Just add your favorite fresh extras. Every bowl comes packed with everything you need for the ultimate pho experience and ready in minutes. Bring the bold, authentic flavors of Vietnam straight to your home. Pholicious is now available at Walmart or walmart.com.
Shenyun Creations, the streaming platform from Shenyun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
Hi, I'm Amy Grant. I was living with a rare heart condition, and the doctor said if I didn't take care of it, it would become catastrophic. A few months later, I had open heart surgery that saved my life, and I owe it to the research and life-saving medical breakthroughs developed by the American Heart Association. Like so many women, I pushed through no matter what. But I've learned you have to take care of yourself in order to take care of other people.
I had a pretty normal mom life. Everything was pretty good, and it was a very happy life. I was given the diagnosis that I had peripartum cardiomyopathy, which is basically a pregnancy-induced heart failure. They told me my only chance was a heart transplant.
And the American Heart Association helped make that possible. Their research helped save me.
Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help fund the next medical breakthrough, get the next person trained in CPR, and get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care.
I am very thankful for the American Heart Association. I'm grateful for just every day that I get with my children.
Give $19 a month with your credit card, and we'll send you this special t-shirt you can wear to show you're part of a community of monthly donors working to help save more lives.
It's hard to imagine that a mom can die from pregnancy-induced heart failure, but thousands die every year. That's why your support is so urgently needed.
Any of us, every one of us, can make a modest monthly donation that actually helps and benefits everybody. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor. Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Author Jack Bialik explores surprising discoveries from ancient history that continue to puzzle researchers today. From razor-sharp Chinese swords made with advanced metallurgy to mysterious Roman artifacts with no known purpose, his work examines how much knowledge ancient civilizations may have possessed and how easily information can be lost. In this interview, Bialik reflects on humility, history, and what the past can teach us about preserving knowledge for the future.
What would you say are some of your most amazing facts or some of your favorite discoveries that you made from ancient times, ancient knowledge?
Well, the one that really fascinated me was from the Terracotta Army. You know, the Terracotta Army is in China. There are over 7,000 terracotta warriors in over 300 acres of land there. And with those warriors, there were all kinds of things buried. There was swords, there was knives, bows and arrows, there was musical equipment and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing, now this was 2,000 years ago, those swords that they found were still sharp. And if you find a sword that was buried like in the Middle Ages that they used in the 1300s, those swords are pitted and rusted. You can barely even tell they're a sword anymore. But these swords from the ancient China, from Qin Shi was the name of the emperor at that time, those swords are still sharp, and that's because they had chromium in them. They were manufactured with chromium. Well, we didn't figure out how to manufacture with chromium until the 1800s. And I was astounded, how did these people figure this out, so long ago? Really amazing.
So again, I think that what's really interesting about your book is how you put all of these together. Because if you find an individual fact like that, you may think, okay, it's just one off, it's a coincidence, it's something that, doesn't mean anything. But when you put them together, it's a different story. Now, I think you have with you a dodecahedron, something from the Roman Empire. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, so the ancient Roman dodecahedron. Now, this is an interesting artifact. They found about 100 of these, maybe a little over 100 of these. They're made out of bronze. This one here is just a replica. It has 12 sides. If you cut this in half, you can see there's 6 sides on top. There's one in the middle and 4 around here, and then there's 6 more on the bottom. So it's a 6-sided object, and each of the sides has a hole of a different size. I don't know if you can see that, but there's some small holes and some larger ones. And the interesting thing about this artifact is that we don't know what it was used for. There's nothing written. There's no pictures of it in any books. Nobody drew pictures of it. We don't know who manufactured them other than that it was Romans. And, this is an example of lost knowledge where it's lost.
And now you start the book with a quote that sticks in my mind. And it's a quote from Socrates, the famous Greek philosopher, who says, "I know that I know nothing." And I think that's very significant because it really shows a degree of humbleness. And by being humble, you have the wisdom to actually learn something. If you think you know it all, then you're not going to learn much. So how do you relate that to today's world and everything that's happening?
Well, this is really kind of the point of the book. When I started writing it, I said, oh, that's an interesting fact. And I put that down. I said, oh, that's interesting. I put that down. And then I got to the end of the book and I said, well, what's the point? So what? We keep doing this over and over again. So what's the point? And I think the point is that we need to be humble and think about our future as well, because we don't do that. We don't do it enough is the real problem. We kept information on stone tablets, which last thousands of years. We moved to papyrus, which also can last 1,000 years. And books and paper last a very long time if it's kept in the right kind of environment. But as we move further and further into the future with DVDs or USB thumb drives, those last 30 years, 40 years. The pits oxidize inside of those DVDs. They won't be readable again. Our SSD drives are electronics. How long do electronics last? How long does your computer last? 5 years, maybe? I had an interesting experience. I was looking for an old photograph, and this happened last night, and I found a whole bunch of old, like USB drives and, thumb drives, whatever. I had about 8 of them, and I was going through them all. 2 of them wouldn't read. The computer wouldn't read them. They were dead. And, we're thinking about how we can put more and more information in denser and denser ways onto electronics, but we're not thinking about how long is that information going to last? How long can I use it? How long can our children, will they be able to read it, or our children's children?
Ski lacerations, injuries caused by sharp ski blades during skiing accidents, have prompted new safety rules for the upcoming Winter Olympics. A survivor and entrepreneur is leading the push with protective undergarments now mandated in elite competition ahead of the Milano Cortina Games.
Make sure I got a good blade on this.
Victor Vionsek lost half the blood in his body and nearly died in a horrific ski crash. Now he's on a mission to make ski lacerations, the potentially fatal cuts caused by razor-sharp edges, a thing of the past. And to do that, he founded cut-resistant undergarments brand Vic's Protection.
So let me show you here up close. I can apply a whole lot of pressure
Ski lacerations are common in the sport. As well as highly dangerous, they're possible at all skill levels when collisions occur. Bionsek's accident happened while he was racing for his college in 2019.
I cut my thigh, cut through all the muscular tissue there, the nerves, the IT band, and apparently I just nicked the femoral artery, and I was losing blood ridiculously quickly.
After his recovery, he bought and tested every cut-resistant product he could find, learning and refining. The International Ski and Snowboard Federation has made cut-resistant undergarments mandatory from the waist down from this season in all alpine disciplines at the World Cup and Olympics. That's as the ski world prepares for February's Milano Cortina Games. That protection could extend to the whole body. Bionsek's company is also working on neck guards and undershirts. He said he feels like the only reason he survived was because he had a purpose.
And this was that purpose, to eliminate ski lacerations from the sport entirely.
New York City is always full of surprises. Just when you think the city's streets would be empty, locals and tourists could be found in hotspots like Central Park and Times Square. NTD's Sean Marshall has more.
Even during a huge snowstorm in New York City, some people still find ways to have fun. The government advises people to stay warm at home, but some outdoor areas are always crowded and full of people, like Central Park. Some people are happy to brave the storm, like these people taking advantage of the popular Pilgrim Hill. I see you have a different setup than the usual sled and toboggan. How long have you been out here?
I've been out here about 3 hours, so
oh my gosh.
I'm getting cold. I got snow in my eyelashes.
What are your plans for the rest of today?
Probably take a break, get some hot chocolate, and maybe come back out.
This your first time coming out here?
For snow, yeah. We've been to Central Park, but yeah, we've had these sleds for a while, just waiting for the winter.
And have any special plans for the storm today?
This,
enjoying the
yeah.
snow, yeah. Is this your sled here?
Yeah, it is. We've been saving up a cardboard box for a snowy day like today. We learned the faster you run and then jump onto the box, the quicker you'll go down the hill.
Nice. Times Square does not shut down during the stormy weather. Tourists and locals still make use of the space to capture the change in scenery mixed with bright lights and high energy.
Just out here filming. I come out pretty much every single big snowstorm to try to get some footage. Been doing for almost 10 years. So I love coming to Times Square because the lights just light up the snow in a really cool way.
A couple people found a clean spot to make a snow angel, but security saw them and closed the gate. This little guy figured he'd just do it right in the middle of the sidewalk.
I'm not from New York City, I'm from the UK. It's not this cold in the UK, so I've come for work, but I'm staying for ice cream.
Any plans for the rest of the storm today?
I'm going to go back to my hotel and just watch everybody enjoying themselves in the snow, I think.
It just shows that fun experiences can still be had without spending a ton of money, as long as you're willing to sacrifice warm comfort for a little while. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
As the record snowstorm is hitting many parts of the country, in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, snow and fun are surely not amiss as well. Take a look. Washington received its first major snowstorm of the season today, bringing teams of workers out to clear snow from the U.S. Capitol, the Supreme Court, and other federal buildings. Forecasters said snow, sleet, freezing rain, and dangerously frigid temperatures would remain in the Washington, D.C. region through much of the coming week. Washington, D.C. and 17 states have declared weather emergencies, according to the Department of Homeland Security. As crews work to remove the snow, nearby residents brave the cold temperatures and slick weather conditions to play and sled in the snow outside the U.S. Capitol.
We just live nearby. We wanted to give the kids a chance to play in the snow, and we had been hearing all week about snowpocalypse. Everyone was worried about it, but honestly, we're pretty excited.
They're all sledding down. They're having a great time. I'm glad it's open today.
It's beautiful. It's so fun to go down Capitol Hill. It was great powder this morning. It's getting a little sleety now, but we're having a great time.
American rock climber Alex Honnold set a new free solo climbing record today by scaling Taiwan's tallest building with 1,667 feet for just an hour and a half without any protective equipment. Honnold is known for the first person to free solo El Capitan, the iconic 3,000 feet monolith at the Yosemite National Park. He's now achieved a new historical record as the tallest urban free solo at the Taipei 101 Tower in Taipei, Taiwan. Let's take a look. After initial nervousness about the unsecured ascent, members of the watching crowd said they had full faith in Honnold to complete the climb. The climb with no safety equipment took place with the full support and permission of Taipei 101 and the city government. Honnold said he had once thought of climbing it without permission. Netflix was live streaming the entire climb.
Yeah, it was like, what a view. It's incredible. I was like, what a beautiful day. It was very windy, so I was like, don't fall off the spire. I was like trying to balance nicely, but no, I was like, what an incredible position, and I mean, what a beautiful way to see Taipei. And it's nice because we've been here all week and it's been gray and rainy, kind of socked in, and today was just so perfect, and you could see for miles, super clear. I was like, couldn't be a better time to be on the top of the spire, appreciating the position.
This is not the first time Taipei 101 has been scaled. In 2004, a French climber dubbed Spider-Man for his ropeless ascents of some of the world's tallest skyscrapers climbed the building, though he did so with a safety rope and in a time of 4 hours. And that's all for today's news. For around-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.